Hello everyone, Phoenix Knight here. Welcome to the channel, and welcome to the first episode of Pinot with Phoenix for May 2024. For those of you who are wondering, what in the world is Pinot with Phoenix? Pinot with Phoenix is basically just a new catchy name for the end of month game recap. It just kind of rolls off the tip of the tongue in my opinion. Anyway, that ramble aside, we're at the end of yet another month for the month of May. So let's go ahead and recap everything that happened on the month of May. First up, I'm going to pull up my notes here, tab that over to the other side, and we're going to start off with the very first game of the month as we played Terra Mystica. Now, Terra Mystica has been an old favorite that we've played on the channel several times. So actually we played the Mermaids against the Cuddlers in this one, and we managed to win this game, but I think Terra Mystica is starting to show its age a little bit, and a lot of that is in the passive cult track, where both Gaia Project and Age of Innovation, which are also games I've featured on the channel in the same universe, actually have a more engaging research or cult tracks, whatever you want to call them, or I forget what they're called in Age of Innovation. I default to research tracks, but I don't think that's the correct term for that. But where I'm going with that is they actually have additional resources you can gain from those, where there's actually a strategy to what track you go up rather than just going up the such and such track. Granted, you still need Federation tokens or to have a city out in Gaia Project or Age of Innovation to be able to get whatever resource you've got. But yeah, so that's kind of a thing where I think Terra Mystica is starting to show its age a little bit. Now, we did win the game as we played that, but like I said, and I still do enjoy Terra Mystica, but when I do my top 100 later this year, or not, when I do my top 100 for next year, I do see this game taking a little bit of a dive. I don't know how far it's going to fall. Probably not out of the top 10, but don't hold me to that when it comes time. So that's it for Terra Mystica. Next up, we played Black Orchestra. We actually played this game a couple times. We played it once on the channel as part of my Tack Up Wargaming list, which was Game 4, and we went and played it over on Jester's channel was it the same night? Or it might have been the same night that we played Black Orchestra for the channel solo. But this is a game by Starling Games where, and I kind of forgot to talk a little about what Terra Mystica is, but you're building up your living space for whatever fantasy faction you have in Terra Mystica. So Black Orchestra is actually about the hunt for Hitler in World War II Europe. And the ask isn't too terribly big an ask. You're just trying to assassinate one of the most evil people to ever walk God's green earth with his personal goon squad and his deputies harassing you at every turn. So in the game that we played solo on the channel, we actually did manage to take Hitler out. I forgot what plot we used for that, but we are also playing with the Trusted Deputy variant on the channel, where, as you might recall for that game, we designated Deputy as Trusted, and then we have to go take them out. So we have to take both Hitler and his Trusted Deputy out to win the game. We didn't play with that variant on Jester when we stopped by Jester's channel with that game, because it was Jester's first time playing the game, so I didn't want to throw too much at him for the first game. He probably would have been capable of handling that, but for a teaching game, I didn't want to throw that at him. So that's it for Black Orchestra. Next up, we had the second half of the spring campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. When we left off at the end of April, Jenny and Luke had just gone on their search for Kadath. Jenny had ended up captured, where Randolph moved over to Luke's deck. Sister Mary and Trish had forced their way into the Dreamlands, but they lost their side of Randolph on the descent into the Dreamlands. Then for the Dreamers, everything kind of started to go sideways for us, where we ended up losing the Dream side Randolph in the third scenario, which was Dark Side of the Moon. Then in the third scenario for the Waking side, we actually got down under the Sea of Pitch into Atlach-Naka's realm. Then the fourth scenarios, the less said about that on the Dream side, the better. We ended up flipping the wrong tarot card in hindsight, and I've talked about this multiple times on the channel. I'm not going to rehash it, but things went sideways for us in Where the Gods Dwell. Whereas it was getting dicey in Weaver of the Cosmos on Memorial Day for Sister Mary and Trish, but they managed to pull that scenario out of the fire. So I do still really enjoy this campaign, and I might do like a top I might do a ranking list of the campaigns that I've played in the card game. I haven't played the newest campaign, Feast of Hemlock Vale, yet, so I don't know where that's going to rank on the list yet, but I'm sure that'll impact the list at some point when I finally get to that. But that's it for the spring campaign for Arkham Horror, the card game. Next up, we had another round of baseball testing as we went to Inside Pitch Baseball from Inside Sports Games First. Now, Inside Pitch Baseball, as you might probably guess, it's a sports simulator. A little bit of backstory on why I came back to this game and the next game on the list. So when I did baseball testing back in March, I actually changed the layout that I use on my baseball videos in the middle part of the baseball testing week, where I had my old magnetic board that I was using to track the base runners and all that. One thing I never liked about that board, though, was it had the cards. It didn't have the space for the cards, so I couldn't keep all of the base running information visible at first glance. I would always have to go hunt that down. So I wanted to find a layout that would let me track all of those cards. That's where the board I got from a game called What About Baseball was actually very helpful on that regard. So I was able to track down the board for that, and I actually really liked the board as it came in to the series, or to the channel, I should say, where I was able to keep the running information visible at first glance, and it actually gave me a little bit more atmosphere on having the actual board available. So for that game, we went to 1975 as we played the Twins at the Red Sox. Boston managed to walk off with a 2-1 victory. Now, I'm coming out of Inside Pitch a little bit conflicted, where on the one hand, I really like the game, but on the other, there's definitely a lot to learn with this game, and I need to spend more time with it before I can fully pass judgment on Inside Pitch. And I might do another season replay, this time going to Inside Pitch, but I haven't decided on that yet. Anyway, that's it for Inside Pitch Baseball. We went back to APA Baseball next, which is the baseball simulator by APA Games. For this one, I went to 2005 Oakland and the Chicago White Sox using the Paul Marino boards, which is kind of a midpoint, I guess, between the basic game and the master game. So I've never really liked the basic game just because it feels almost a little bit too simple in a sense. But the master game I've heard a lot of very intimidating things about. I do have the master game for both APA Baseball and APA Football now. So I'll probably work on getting those, on trying to learn those at some point and seeing what I think of them. But in terms of the game of APA Baseball we played, Oakland actually ended up controlling that game and winning 3-0. Though I don't think there was any kind of statistical highlight with like a no-hitter or a perfect game or anything like that. But that's it for APA Baseball. Like I said, I do like the simplicity of the basic game, and even the Marino boards seem to be fairly straightforward to use. But I'm not sure about the master game yet. Again, I just got that in as a product unboxing last night, so I haven't even had time to dig into that yet. I'm going to have to work on tabbing that book out so it's easier to find everything. But that's it for APA Baseball. Next up, we went to a map-making game as we played Cartographers from Thunderworks Games. In Cartographers, you're actually out mapping out a land for your queen and trying to do the best you can with that and having to survive monster attacks. I really enjoy this game, and a lot of it's because it travels so well. I ended up being a master cartographer in this game, and it actually travels very easily, where I could just load it up. I could just load it up into my travel bag, and away I go with that. So definitely something to keep in mind there. Last up for the month, we went to a playthrough of Mag 23 Guadalcanal from Historic Wings. Now in this one, you're dumped into the Battle of Guadalcanal, trying to build a narrative around your squadron of pilots in the Cactus Air Force, as it were. We ended up having 2 missions on the day in Mag 23 Guadalcanal, where I really didn't want to have any because I wanted to let my squadron get a little bit of rest in terms of the flying the missions. We ended up having 2 that we had to fly. We actually ended up having 2 missions charged to us. One was I believe one was a land mission where I said, yeah, no, we're not flying that one because, again, I wanted to get my squadron some rest, and I had the wind locked up for the week, so I didn't want to have anything happen to my pilots. Unfortunately, we had a second mission where the weather cleared up for us, and it ended up being an air mission, which I kind of felt like we had to fly, just because we had the squadron coming at us, because we had the Japanese coming at us, and I didn't really feel like having Henderson Field take unfettered punishment. So that's why I felt like we had to fly that one. Unfortunately, we had some problems with the aircraft, as Henderson Field is wont to do. Jester ended up crashing on us and having to be transferred out. And then additionally, we lost Reptile and Sting for a little while. Reptile at least has been captured, and given the nature of the Japanese during World War II, yeah, I think that's pretty much curtains for Reptile, if I'm being perfectly honest. Sting is currently MIA, though. We might get him back, but if he gets captured, I expect he'll befall a similar fate as Reptile will. So that's it for the games for the month. Next, we're going to recap Mystical Munchies, where for Mystical Munchies this month, we were cooking out of the Star Wars Galactic Baking Cookbook and the recipes that we made and what I thought of them. First up for the appetizer, we made the Pod Race Puffs. These were actually really good, and they felt like tiny portable pizzas with the fix of ingredients that was on them. I think I was supposed to use a different type of Parmesan cheese for the Pod Race Puffs, but it all worked out. Everything turned out really good. The muffin tin was actually very easy to work with, which I was very relieved with. Next up, we had the side, which was Puffer Pig Pocket Pizza. Say that 5 times fast. These ended up being like they sound, basically pocket pizzas, essentially, where you had the ricotta cheese. There was a different kind of cheese in there as well, but I forget what it was. But these actually turned out really good as well, and they worked very well as leftovers, which is one thing I keep an eye on when I'm picking out recipes for Mystical Munchies, especially around the entree period of the month, where I tend to want to be able to use those as meals, essentially, for the course of the month, especially also on the day in question. So it's good when a recipe turns out to work as a meal like that. Speaking of the meals, the entree for the month was the Fallon Posset cheese stuffed sandwich, and this turned out to be stromboli. Now, it did taste fine, and I was able to use it as leftovers. One thing I've always been a little bit nervous about is how bread and bread-like ingredients keep as leftovers. This did actually keep fine as leftovers, where I was able to use it for another day. But I'm not the biggest fan in the world of like a heavy mustard with Swiss cheese mixture. That doesn't really work for me all that well. So I probably won't be making this again. Maybe I'll use some different ingredients on the next time I make this. Maybe change out the cheese, possibly the sauce, but it might be a recipe I'll have to play around with a little bit more. Last up for the dessert, we made Tatooine Sandies, which were basically just cookies with the chocolate and vanilla, essentially chocolate being mixed in, or not being mixed in, having to melt it down and then dip the Sandies in the chocolate mixtures. These actually tasted good, but it was a lot of work to put them together, as a lot of these cookie recipes tend to be a lot of work. That's it for Mystical Munchies. Next up, we'll move into Ask Me Anything. So for those of you who are, let me tab that over to my notes as well. For those of you who are new to the channel, first of all, welcome to the channel. Second of all, the Ask Me Anything segment is a segment where you can ask me questions, and as long as I don't deem them too personal, I will answer them. Now, in terms of what's too personal, just use a little common sense on that. If you wouldn't want it asked of you, don't ask it of me. That's the rule I always give to people. So, the way you get a question on this segment is from any video from the previous month's recap until the last video for the month. You'll leave a question in the comments of any of those videos with an AMA tag on it. And again, as long as it's not too personal, I will answer those questions. So we actually had 2 questions that we had asked for Ask Me Anything. First up, Jester wanted me to weigh in when I made the Pod Race Puffs to comment on what my favorite thing I've made so far on Mystical Munchies is. Ignoring the no-bake cookies, which has always been a family favorite, I was actually a surprisingly big fan of the Papanazzi, the donuts I made back out of the Final Fantasy XIV Ultimate Cookbook. Even though that was a recipe that took a couple days, but it was a really good challenge for me to make donuts on essentially homemade donuts. So that was a recipe that I was really fond of. And then Matthew, when I made the Puffer Pig Pocket Pizza, wanted me to do a cull update during the monthly recap. So I definitely will be happy to work that in. I don't tend to cull games all that quickly. Usually what I do when I'm going to sell games is I look for pointed trades on the Geek, and then I'll do a big call of Noble Knight at Noble Knight for what I'm not able to sell or trade during the course of the year. That'll be usually a December trip where I try to get over to Noble Knight at least once a month, or at least once a year, because it's only a couple hours away from me. So it's a fairly easy drive. It's a fairly easy day drive when I take a PTO day or something like that. So I'm happy to work in a cull update, and it's actually been a pretty slow cull. My latest cull was I just got rid of Atlantic Chase, and I traded that in for Combat Commander Pacific. I haven't had the chance to get Combat Commander Pacific out yet. I did play Combat Commander Europe as I stopped by Jester's channel again toward the end of this month. Actually, it was my Memorial Day game. And I wasn't really the biggest fan of Combat Commander in the world. At least not on first brush with it. So it might be something I have to think about later. But that's it for Ask Me Anything. Now let's talk a little bit more about my 1991 season replay for Payoff Pitch Baseball. So at this time last month, we were near the halfway point of the season. Now we're getting ready to start the playoffs. So first, let's take a look at the standings for the season. So I might have to zoom in on this just a touch so you guys can see it a little better. I'll hit it again there. That should work. All right, so looking in the AL East, that was almost a dogfight to the end, where the Toronto Blue Jays actually ended up winning the division, and they're going to be the 1 seed in the American League with a record of 95-67. Minnesota actually had the same record of 95-67, but because of a better board record, which is basically the games that I feature on Facebook, or would have been on video if I had been doing the replay on the channel. That's what I mean by board games. So Jester stopping by. Evening, Jester. I was actually by your recap earlier, as you probably saw. This is kind of a test stream as well, testing the ability to do recaps on the stream aspect. So as I was saying about the 91 standings, Toronto is the number 1 seed over Minnesota due to aforementioned board record. Minnesota, of course, being the 2 seed. Oakland is actually the 3 seed, and we'll come back to the brackets in a second. Detroit's the 4, and Kansas City's the 5. Looking in the NL, the Pirates pretty much ran away with the National League in this one. They picked up 107 wins to the Dodgers' 102 wins. And what are you... Let me adjust that down. How come I didn't tell him I was going live? I didn't know he didn't know I did live things and like the live format. I actually didn't know I was going live until probably about a couple hours ago. I was also doing some prep. I was also doing my weekly food prep, so I wasn't sure if I was going to record this or go live with it. I don't know if I'm going to do the recap live in the future. I'll have to play around with that idea. It's mostly a case of, in this case, mostly for this version of the recap, I just kind of ran out of time to get it all recorded. Plus my editor's been a little bit weird where it takes a lot longer to get videos uploaded on the channel. So I kind of decided I wanted to play around with the live format. So we'll give this a try and see what we think of it. But coming back to the 91 standings, the Pirates ran away with the NL East. They're the 1 seed. They have home field advantage throughout the National League playoffs, and they'll have the advantage in the World Series as well. The Dodgers actually won the division in the NL West, and they're the 2 seed. The Braves are in at the 3 seed. The Mets are the 4 seed. Cardinals are the 5. In terms of the accuracy of this replay, it's actually very good. So of the 4 division winners, which I have in bold here, the Blue Jays, the Twins, the Pirates, and the Braves, of the 4 real-life division winners historically, 3 of them actually still won the division. As I mentioned, the only historical division winner who didn't win their division was the Braves. But they lost. They were 9 games back of the Dodgers in this one. So, yeah, it was a tough break for the Braves. But let's take a look at the brackets here. You might have a hard time seeing this. So if you're familiar with the playoff format that RJL Network does on his replays of Inside Pitch, I'm doing the playoffs basically the same way. Where for the wild card round, the 6 seed will be at the 5 seed, the winner of that will be at the 4 seed, and then the winner of that will play the 1 seed in the division series, and then 2 and 3 will play in the other division series. So in this case, the 6 seed would actually have been the... Who would it have been? It actually would have been the Milwaukee Brewers, because I take the top 3 teams in the division, in each division. But because the Brewers finished under 500, they didn't make the playoffs. The same thing's going to happen in the National League, where the 6th seed would have been the San Francisco Giants. But again, they finished well under 500, so they won't make the playoffs either, which is why you see X's in the 6 and 5 seeds when you get into the playoffs. So what we're going to be starting with for the wild card game is we'll be starting off with the Kansas City Royals at the Detroit Tigers in the American League, the winner of which will advance to play the Toronto Blue Jays in the American League Division Series. Then in the National League, the Cardinals will be traveling to Shea Stadium to play the Mets in the wild card game. Winner of that, of course, will play the Pirates. So I was going back and forth on this, but I think I am going to put the playoffs on the channel. And the reason I'm going to do that is because that'll basically serve as kind of the midpoint between just the World Series on the replay as a channel test and the entire replay Baptism by Fire. As I've mentioned before, I've mentioned this multiple times on the channel, where I was going to be doing this entire replay on the channel because everything after baseball testing weekend back in March looked like, okay, everything's all ready to go for this. I was going to maybe give myself another month off, and then start the replay. The wildcard game is one game or a series. The wildcard game is going to be a one game, essentially one game playoff. So the winner of the one game playoff will advance into the division series. Is how that's going to work. So as I was saying, in terms of after baseball testing week, after everything was all set to go for that, I was going to pick out the season and probably started in May. Then I got sick right after baseball testing week, where I came down with a cold all of a sudden, to the point where I had really bad night shakes while I was sleeping. So it ended up being terrible sleep, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not starting a replay while I'm like this, at least not one I'm going to put on the channel. But it kind of let me step back a little bit and say, okay, wait a second. Rather than going Baptism by Fire and putting a replay on the channel, let me do one off the channel just to see how my body handles that. And it seems like it handled the regular season just fine. So that's why we're going to put the playoffs on the channel as kind of the final test for that. So I'm going to work on setting that up probably after this goes up on the channel later tonight before I go to bed for a 4 a.m. workout. So that's it for the 91 playoffs. Let's come back up top and talk about what's coming in June. So we're going to have a lot of new stuff on the channel in June. In fact, of the 5 games that I've got scheduled for Sundays in June, barring the 1991 playoffs, 4 of them are sports games, and 3 are going to be new to the channel for the month. We're going to lead off Sundays in June with a new hockey game as we play Inside the Crease Hockey from Inside Sports Hockey. After that, we'll be back to the hockey rink again with a game of APA Hockey. Then the next 2 Sundays will be dedicated to football with the same 2 companies in the same order. We'll be playing Inside Blitz Football and then APA Football once again. Then the last video on Sunday, we'll be back to our background playthrough of Mag 23 Guadalcanal. The plan with that video is I'm going to see if I can do an entire week on the channel in a Sunday video, where I could potentially use that as a campaign and maybe something in December maybe when I've got time off, where I could go through a campaign a bit faster than what I'm currently doing with essentially stepping in and out of it on doing a Day of Missions. Now, the Day of Missions format is great for something like a Wednesday video, but again, I want to play around with doing a week as a Sunday video. As for the Wednesdays, we're going to lead off Wednesdays by commemorating D-Day, because the 80th anniversary of that is coming up next Thursday, with a game of D-Day Dice. After that, we're back to the skies over World War II Europe once again, as we play game number 5 on my TACUP Wargaming list, with Target for Today. The Phoenix's Fury is going through some maintenance after some of our mishaps in December. Next up, we're going to go back to a game of Aeon's End before moving back to the skies in the World War II Pacific, as we play, this time, we're going to be playing Zero Leader from DVG. As for Mystical Munchies, for June, we're going to be cooking out of the official Fallout cookbook. For this one, we're going to be making bacon-wrapped scallops, which is also known, let me get the weird name out here, as Mystery Meat-Wrapped Nukalurk. I don't write the names for these, so give me a break on that. Anyway, we'll be making those bacon-wrapped scallions, cornbread muffins, a roast prime rib, also known as the Captain's Feast, and a berry crumble recipe. As June has 5 Saturdays in it, we also need a drink, so we'll be making Deezer's Lemonade. Again, I don't make up the names for these recipes. With that, we can go ahead and wrap this video up and close out the first episode of Pinot with Phoenix for May 2024. I'm open to feedback on the name, as it's just something that sounded catchy, but I've never been really good with the catchy names. Most of the names I come up with sound lame. Mystery Meat. Yum. Well, you'll get to find out all about that tomorrow on the channel. Which, actually, tomorrow's Mystical Munchies will be the aforementioned mystery... what was it called? Mystery Meat Wrapped Nukalurk, the bacon wrapped scallops. I've actually got the scallops already. I need to get those defrosting. Then Sunday will be our first game of the month with a hockey debut as we play Inside the Crease Hockey from Inside Sports Games. Wednesday, we're going to commemorate the 80th anniversary of D-Day with a game of D-Day Dice. Thank you for watching the video. Please give the video a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. Be sure to turn on notifications so you get my content. Be well, stay safe, take care of yourselves and your loved ones, and I'll be back with more videos in the future. Until then, take care, everyone.